She's live at the Davis Global Center. Sydney, you were there talking to state and federal officials after their arrival. What happens next?
Right. So as you said, just one of those 16 did test positive. The 15 of them who are not positive are in their quarantine unit, and then that one is in their biocontainment unit here at UNMC. Now, when it comes to the rooms that those passengers are staying in, those rooms here in Omaha are designed to have negative pressure, so if the virus is inside, it can't escape. The ventilation is separate from the building, and it's filtered through highly efficient air filters, so they say that risk to the general public is very low.
Quarantine is sort of like a very well-managed, air-handled hotel room, and the biocontainment unit is like a very well-managed, air-handled intensive care unit.
Now, again, as we said, they did tell us that risk to the general public is very low. All of the passengers who are here at UNMC don't have contact with one another. They are not intermingling. They have no visitors. The only people who they're really coming in contact with are the physicians who are taking care of them. They are checking in with them daily. They're tested twice a day, and they will be throughout that 42-day quarantine period. Live in Omaha, I'm Sydney Babb, First Alert 6.
Yeah, let us know if anything changes. Sydney Babb live tonight for us. The Trump administration